Sick of getting blisters? Stop slipping and just be comfortable with Pure Grip Socks Pro. Great fit, great comfort, lots of grip, and an even better price. Available now at puregripsocks.com.
Something that I'm really proud of with the reviews that I post on this channel is that I've always been as brutally honest as possible, where if I like something, I tell you, and if I don't like something, I tell you as well. And in the case of the Copa series, specifically any model with laces, since 2019, unless it's a classic Copa Mundial, there realistically hasn't been a good reason to buy a 0.1 Copa, that is, until right now. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the brand new Adidas Copa Pure.1, the replacement for the Sense 0.1, one of the more disappointing boots from the three stripes in recent memory, but also one that doesn't necessarily change a lot in regards to the design philosophy of the modern Copa series. It's still a fusion skin upper with leather in the forefoot. However, what they've done with the upper and what they've done with the leather, while possibly on the controversial end of things, depending on what your opinion is, it is a major improvement. And then flip over to the bottom and you might recognize this sole plate and stud pattern. Again, something that might be a little controversial, but the overall package definitely ends up being a major improvement. For the first time in a long time, there's actually a good reason as to why you would want a modern Copa model over the Nike Tiempo if you're talking about the modern leather football boot category. Speaking of the Tiempo, those retail for $230 and so do the Pure 0.1s, a $5 increase over the Sense 0.1 they replace. So given that the design philosophy hasn't really changed all that much, what makes these different from the model they replace? What makes them better? And of course, how do they stack up against their competition, mainly from Nike in the Tiempo Legend 9 Elite, which now retails for the exact same price. Which one should you pick and why? We're going to talk about all of that as we cover the details of the Copa Pure 0.1 and also talk a little bit about how they compare to the Pure Plus laceless model. So if you're interested in learning more, including how they fit and feel on feet, please stick around. And if you are interested in a pair for yourself, you can pick them up below their normal retail price by way of some exclusive SR4U coupon codes by checking out the first link down below. And really quickly, if you guys enjoy the content, perhaps want to see some reviews of the Copa Pure takedowns, maybe even a direct comparison with the Nike Tiempo, drop a like on the video and make sure you're subscribed to the channel if you haven't already so you don't miss out on my reviews of all the latest football boots of 2023. I think it's safe to say that we're in an era of football boots that's all about new technology, or at least things that are presented to us as new technology, even though some of them really don't do anything at all, but the end goal is always to improve overall performance. But I think what's interesting about the modern leather category of football boots in particular is it got to a point where the technology was dominating the main reason why this category exists in the first place, and that is for the feel of natural old school leather. So what we've seen recently, specifically with the Nike Tiempo Legend 9, is a little bit of a step back, simplifying the football boot for the betterment of the overall product. And I think that's kind of the best way of describing what Adidas have also done with the new Copa Pure 0.1. The upper is still what they're calling fusion skin, which combines natural leather in the forefoot and toe box area and more of like a textile-based synthetic through the midfoot. In the case of the Pure 0.1, as you'll find with the Pure Plus, it's this really soft, almost neoprene-based material with some foam inserts that do mimic the softness of the leather that you're going to find at the front. But the controversial aspect this time around is that there is no kangaroo leather to be found on the modern Copa series, whether it's the Plus or the 0.1, it now features a cow leather upper, which to the average consumer probably doesn't matter that much, but to a football boot enthusiast, somebody that would be watching this video, we've always been presented kangaroo leather as being the best of the best. So for Adidas to take it away on their latest top-end leather product, it kind of comes across as a little bit of a cost-cutting measure, even though the price of the boot has actually increased $5 compared to the old one, which was kangaroo leather. And I guess to spare you a very long-winded explanation as to why I think they've done this, to make a long story short, I really feel like they don't want to miss out on the California market, which I realize is just one state in the US, but it is a gigantic market for any brand to miss out on, being that they have banned kangaroo leather in that state. It's possible that other states will follow. It's possible that other countries will follow. And I really feel like Adidas is trying to get ahead of the curve in that regard don't think that this is a trend that won't make its way into other brands. Nonetheless, what I really think is important about the cow leather featured on this Copa Pure.1 as opposed to kangaroo leather is it's actually nicer than the kangaroo leather featured on the Copa Sense line. You also get way more leather than what was featured on the Sense Point 1, which I think was one of the more disappointing aspects of that football boot. It was literally just focused in on the toes. Now the leather flows pretty much all the way through the forefoot, cutting off basically at the front Adidas stripe, and then flows pretty deep into the forefoot on the medial side as well. So it isn't a full leather upper like you're going to find from the Nike Tiempo. I love the fact that those are leather all the way through the medial side of the midfoot. However, the flow from this fusion skin is really nice, and the leather itself is incredibly soft. It might not be kangaroo leather, but it's as soft as pretty much any top-end model out there. So from a quality and feel perspective, I really have no issues with it. And if it is still something that bothers you, I guess you have to ask yourself, do you care more about the feel and quality of the leather or the type of leather? Because in my opinion, the type isn't relevant if the quality doesn't feel good. And I think a great example of that would be the Puma King Platinum 21. That is a kangaroo leather football boot that feels absolutely terrible. The leather on this is 10 times better. Speaking of this specific leather, especially when compared to the Nike Tiempo, it's extremely thin. You'll notice that it doesn't have any stitching, a typical trend that we'll see in modern leather football boots, and the finish on the surface has been left pretty slick. There's a little bit of micro texturing happening on the medial side, but it's not very noticeable on the ball. It's left relatively slick, even more so than the Tiempos, but I think what's even more noticeable is how thin this material is. When the boots are on your feet in particular, the leather stretches out, and it provides almost somewhat of a barefoot feel. There isn't much in the way of padding, there isn't much in the way of protection. This kind of feels like a leather pair of speed boots, which might not be your cup of tea. It might not be what you want from a modern Copa model, but in terms of differentiating itself from other football boots in this specific category, these provide the most barefoot-like sensation. Maybe it's a weird comparison to make, but despite being a leather football boot, these actually might compare more closely to the Adidas X Speed Portals than they do the Nike Tiempos. Another significant change that they've made to the upper on the Copa Pure.1 that was desperately needed is a central lacing system and a standalone tongue. So this features a very traditional U-throat construction with laces running directly down the middle, normal lace holes, and the tongue itself does have kind of like a synthetic leather liner on the surface, but it's made from this really soft mesh-based material that has the perfect amount of padding to it. It matches the thickness of the rest of the upper, and because it's a standalone tongue with a central lacing system, you can open them up. Putting them on is super easy, and then of course tightening them up and having that adjustability on your foot makes the world of difference. This is easily the most comfortable and the best fitting modern Copa model that I think they've ever made, going all the way back to Copa 17.1. Those had a one-piece upper. This, I think, just works that much better, and the material through the midfoot is significantly softer than what was found on Sense.1, 19.1 as well as 20.1, where they just had that really rigid material and then that burrito style tongue that just never felt right. This is, like I said, a significant improvement and maybe a little bit on the old school side of things, but there's a reason why this design is still around in 2023. It just works so well, and I think makes for the best fit and the best overall comfort. Moving to the rear, the boots do maintain a low-cut construction. It's still the only line from Adidas that doesn't come in any kind of a mid-cut variation, although the back has been extended a little bit, perhaps unnecessarily so, but not in a way that I think is bothersome or uncomfortable in any way. We have an internal plastic heel counter, and you'll notice that they have gotten rid of the Sense Pod system. So it does now have a microfiber liner, which is super, super soft, and still has kind of the targeted pads. It's actually kind of reminiscent of what we last saw on the Adidas X Speed Flow. Again, kind of comparing it to some of their speed boots that they've done in the past. I still would have preferred a more traditional liner, just having foam all the way through, but even so, this targeted foam seems to feel very comfortable. Again, huge improvement over Sense Plus and Sense.1, and offers really good lockdown. So no complaints from me in regards to what they've done with this particular design. Then the insole, that is also fully removable. I'll give you guys a quick look at that. Super soft microfiber liner on the surface, and it's made from a single layer of this white foam that actually has some really nice density to it and is a little bit thicker than the average insole from Adidas. Again, some of the nicer insoles you're going to find on any of their boots. Which brings us to the base of the Pure.1, where if you know your football boots, you'll immediately recognize this as the torsion frame originally found on the Adidas Nemesis 17, which came out, as the name would suggest, all the way back in 2017, 6 years ago now. This sole plate was also featured on the Nemesis 18 and has been featured on some Adidas remake products. However, it is now an inline sole plate on their latest product, even though it's 6 years old. What I don't love about them reusing a sole plate from 6 years ago is that they have come up with two unique sole plates for the modern Copa series before coming out with this one, always presenting those as the best they could do for that specific product. And given that they haven't really changed much of the design philosophy with the upper, I don't think it really makes sense to go back and use a sole plate that actually was a current one on other products at the time of these modern Copas being out. So that I think is a little bit contradictory. And in terms of product development, one of the most expensive aspects of making a brand new football boot is the molds and tooling and development of a brand new sole plate and stud pattern. So even though the cost has gone up $5, I can assure you that Adidas has cut costs significantly, probably not as much with the leather as they have with not needing to make a brand new sole plate. With all of that said, this torsion frame sole plate from 6 years ago is the best one we've seen on a modern Copa series since 2019. It makes for a lighter overall construction. It's significantly less bulky than the last two modern Copa sole plates. The flexibility is far more natural in my opinion, and in general just feels really good. And then as far as the stud pattern is concerned, I think it makes sense for a modern Copa in that it's kind of like this half circle shaped stud with a bladed edge. So you still get that freedom to twist and pivot, but they're just a little bit more aggressive in terms of providing that bite. Again, something that you would probably want in a modern day 2023 release football boot. So again, definitely not new technology in any way, but it's a proven sole plate, one that does work well and honestly feels really good on the Copa Pure.1. Which brings us to the weight. How much lighter or heavier is the new Pure.1 compared to the Sense.1 that it replaces? Well, on a scale, both in the same size 9.5 US, starting with the old Sense.1, these guys weigh in at 9.45 ounces, the equivalent of 268 grams, which for a top-end modern football boot, leather or not, that is not particularly light, not very impressive. Then we have the Pure.1. It feels dramatically lighter in hand and on feet, 7.8 ounces, the equivalent of 221 grams, which is significantly lighter, noticeably so, again, both in hand as well as on feet, and now kind of puts it closer to a lot of speed boots out there. Again, if you're comparing it to something like a Nike Tiempo, those are a couple grams lighter than the Pure.1, but I think something that the Copa series, the modern Copa series, has desperately needed. It's a lighter overall construction, and they've done that, I think, mostly with the new sole plate on the Pure.1. So here they are on feet, where I think these are easily my favorite modern Copa boots with laces. And it must be said that the Copa Pure Plus, the laceless option, also feels phenomenal this year. And I think the choice to be made between the two is really dependent on whether or not you're into the laceless thing. If you are, I think the Copa Pure Plus is phenomenal. It's the best laceless Copa they've made, in my opinion. However, if you prefer a little bit of a tighter fit, more adjustability, and in general, just better lockdown and objective performance characteristics, the Pure.1 is objectively the better football boot of the two. The central lacing system and standard tongue just feels fantastic. The material through the midfoot is nice and soft. The leather through the forefoot and toe box area is thin and incredibly flexible. The sole plate feels awesome. And again, the heel is a gigantic improvement. Great lockdown and great overall comfort. Although again, I still think I would have preferred something a little bit more traditional. Nonetheless, from a width perspective, these are going to be suitable for most people. They have plenty of width, although they are relatively low volume through the forefoot and toe box area. However, because the cow leather they're using is so thin and so soft, they are going to stretch. So volume shouldn't be an issue after break-in. Just be aware of it when buying them brand new out of the box. And as far as sizing is concerned, I'm wearing them in my usual size 9.5 US, and the fit and the length is perfect. So if you are looking to order a pair for yourself, I would strongly recommend going true to size in order to achieve the best possible fit. So in conclusion, it is no secret that I don't think Adidas had a very strong 2022, at least when it comes to their general release product, because I think their limited releases, some of them were absolutely incredible. Nonetheless, starting off 2023 with something like the Copa Pure.1, it is definitely a gigantic step, dare I say a giant leap, in the right direction, and I'd even go as far as to say that I think the Copa Pure.1 is easily their best football boot currently available. Which is interesting because I also think it's their most controversial in that it eliminates kangaroo leather and swaps it out for cow leather and utilizes a sole plate that we last saw 6 years ago. My point being that newer isn't always better, and in the case of the modern Copa series, there's an argument to be made that Adidas perhaps lost sight of what this line was supposed to represent in the first place. By going back, I feel like they've found that again, and they've taken a football boot, or a line of football boots I should say, that were some of the worst options in the category and have now made them some of the best. The Copa Pure.1, especially if you're looking for something with a thinner upper, is an amazing pair of leather football boots.